This is the lean database abstraction I've been using in my latest project. No ORM performance penalty, no boilerplate, just a clean contract. I've used all my experience from the last 30 years to ensure it's as lean and as fast as possible. The core is just 8 files and one of them is empty. First, I'll show you how easy it is to wire in new database calls and how to hook the provider into a FastHTML lifecycle. Then we'll go through the core and provider code and talk about what patterns I've used, why it's designed that way, and the rules that I live by. By the end, you'll know how to install and use it in your own projects under the MIT license. Calls to the database through the abstraction are just simple async Python functions wrapped with a db callproc decorator. Inside the function, you typically build a dictionary of parameters. If these are just simple input parameters, the system will work out what type they are. If you're using output parameters or complex input parameters like a table type, then you will have to specify what these are using the output parameter and input collection parameter classes. These are the only classes you're going to have to use in the entire abstraction, and they're very simple to use. Once you've created the parameter list, all you actually need to do is return 4 values. The first one is the procedure to call. The second is the parameter dictionary. The third is whether you want column headers on any ref cursors. And the fourth is just the name of the parameter you want back. If you want all of them back because you're pulling back multiple output parameters, use none. Then in your code, you just call these functions. The decorator does all the hard work of connecting to the database. The database connection and transactions all use an async context to prevent connections hanging around if something goes wrong. I've seen this so many times in ORMs, and I just wanted to make sure it couldn't happen in the abstraction, because if you've ever experienced it, you'll know it's a bastard to debug. This also has the rather pleasant side effect that you will get no partial commits. The procedure will either fully commit or fully roll back depending on whether the procedure succeeds or fails. Providing of course you don't do any inline commits in procedures, which I would strongly recommend against. You'll see in my example here, the call to the procedures is dead straightforward, you just await them. And you'll either get back a dictionary of all the parameters if you didn't select one, or you'll get back just that parameter. If the parameter is a cursor, you'll actually get back a list of tuples. If you wanted headers, the first row will always be the headers themselves. Because I'm not dealing with millions of rows and I don't need ultimate performance, I'm not going to use direct tuple indexing. Instead, I'm going to use a plugin that gives me data indexing capability with dot notation. You'll also find this on my GitHub. Hopefully you've seen by now that the code required to use this is less than that of an ORM once you take data modeling and things like that into account. If your web developers are just using this on their website, then all they really need is the inputs and outputs of the stored procedures, nothing more. So what if you want to use a query builder or direct SQL with this abstraction? You can't. It's designed purely for stored procedures because I want high speed, low complexity, and high security. If you don't understand why stored procedures provide this, you'll find several videos on my channel that explain it fully. I'll put a link in the description. It's also important to note that my first rule of abstractions means that I can't possibly implement these things, at least not yet. The reason why a lot of abstractions become a complex mess and have quite a bit of leakage is because they try and tackle every feature at once. This is just insane. If you don't need a piece of functionality right now, you don't build it. Because if you do build it, you'll probably decide 1, that you don't need it, or 2, even though you're not using it, you'll still have to maintain it and it's another layer to pass code through. Also, just reading the code to work out how it works, it's something your brain has to handle. You'd also be forgiven for thinking that my functions look nothing like database calls. That's deliberate and brings me to my second rule of abstractions. You're building an abstraction so you can replace the functionality later and make it easier to use. Don't make it look like the original code. That will just lead to leakage, more boilerplate, and harder to use. If you can help it, you don't want any boilerplate. Okay, so now you know how to make database calls. How do you actually wire the database into your application? First, you need to set up the configuration. You're going to want to grab the connection config and know the provider name. So in this case, I'm using provider Postgres, and I've set up my connection to the demo database. Now in my FastHTML or FastAPI web app, I just create a lifespan. And in there, to set up the DB, we make 2 calls. The first one is to get the database provider. To do that, we just await init DB provider and we pass in the provider name and the connection object. This will return a DB object. Then we await the creation of the pool, we then yield to the application, and when the application finishes and comes back, we await db.closePool. I did consider making the create pool automatic when you get a DB provider, but I decided against it because in general, if a user has to know to close an object, they should create it. And that's it, you just pass the lifespan into FastAPI or FastHTML. It works exactly the same way, and it's dead simple. Now note that instead of using dependency injection, which is frankly terrible in Python, I went for ambient context, which means that it's just magically available in the rest of the application. But like everything, it comes with trade-offs. More on that in a little bit, because I know that may be a little contentious. Okay, let's delve into the core. We'll ignore __init__ because it's empty. We'll start with provider first because it's where we init our database object. The first thing you'll see in here is that we have an active DB provider global. This provides the ambient context, but no user should use it directly, and that's why we've prefixed it with __. Instead, we use getCurrentDBProvider to implement the service locator pattern, which provides it to the decorator, which we'll see shortly. And this function is very, very simple. It simply checks the global variable acting as a register to say, is this function registered? If it is, return it, otherwise raise an error. To control the ambient context, we have initDBProvider. This uses a double check lock pattern because everybody knows there can be only one. Yes, it's also a popular implementation of the Singleton pattern. Before we get on to what getProviderCallable is, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The thing that people like to call an anti-pattern, ambient context. The anti-pattern argument comes from three things that they say that all ambient context creates. They say it conceals dependencies. That's the whole point, it's an abstraction. I don't want you to know that you're calling a Postgres database. But that said, you know you're calling a database because the decorator basically spells it out for you. So that one I'm just not buying. The second argument is that it creates tight coupling. Your business logic is now tightly coupled to things like sockets, databases, things like that. Because of rule 2, I designed this so that it isn't. The actual functions you call are basically just data transformers. All the coupling is kept within the decorator itself, which entirely belongs to the package. The third one gets people really heated. So if you're screaming at your screen that you won't be able to test it properly with ambient context, then I just have two things to say. 1. You can't mock test a DB anyway, and anyone who thinks otherwise hasn't seen what bad data does to your app. 2. If you really want an exercise in futility, you could test it perfectly by writing a test provider and plugging it in. But don't come crying to me when the first bit of bad data brings down your app. And the final thing I'd like to add is that ambient context has one massive advantage. I don't need to pass my objects around absolutely everywhere. Which takes me to my third rule about abstractions. Minimum code by default. Yes, you could pass your objects around anyway, but it's loads of extra code. And yes, I could validate all the data types on the client side. I'm not going to do that. The store procedure does it perfectly, and it does it faster than Python would. Not to mention that I'd then have to have some kind of type information in the app itself, or I'd have to create some kind of discovery, which again is a load of extra code. The thing to remember is the fastest, most secure, and least buggy code is the code we don't write. Okay, that was a lot to say about a very small file. Let's move on to the next file now, provider discovery. This file is responsible for lazy loading providers. The main reason I want to do this is if we come to a state where we have 5 different providers, I don't want to wait for all of those to be loaded in memory and put into the registry. Instead, the first time you request a provider, we'll go and see if it's there. If it is, we'll load it in. The reason this doesn't have a double check lock pattern is it's only ever called by provider, and that already has a double check lock pattern. Yes, technically you should probably have one just in case someone calls it directly, but it's owned by the package, and adding one would add a ton of extra potential contention. So how does register provider get called? Well, the only thing the providers need to know about is if we open its init file, it needs to know to call register provider and pass in its class. That's all it needs to do. You'll notice we have another global in here called pending provider. I toyed with not having this, but the evil that it caused not having it was more problematic than having it in the first place, which is the provider that's being registered needs to know the internal data structure of the core, which it shouldn't need to do. So this prevents that. Moving on to connections.py now, this just contains a data class, and the data class defines the configuration for the database connection. All you need to do is pull the reference to this class into your code, fill out the fields, and you're golden. Okay, dbtypes.py. This contains our type object, so output parameter, input collection param, a base param type that the others inherit from, and then we have an enum that contains common database types. This enum is used for the data types for the other param objects. Remember, if your type is just a normal input parameter, then you don't need to use typing at all, the system will detect it. Now into exceptions. This lists all of the exceptions that our application can raise. There's not a lot of them, and one of them is just a base type. If we didn't have these, then the consumers of our abstraction would need to know about all the database types in all the providers. They'd also have to change their error trapping if they change database. We don't want that. This basically sets a unified set of exceptions that they're going to get whenever they use our package. Decorators.py. This is where all the magic happens. It contains one single decorator, db callproc. This is what actually makes our stored procedure functions call. What it does is, first, it calls getCurrentDBProvider to get the current DB provider class. This is so the users don't need to know about any of the classes we use for the plumbing. And then we actually call our function. This returns us the proc name, the params, the include header, and the results key, which is why we return those things. We then reach down to the provider and call its callproc method, passing in proc name, parameters, and whether we want to include headers. This line here is what actually calls the database proc. We get the results back to the results variable, and then if we have a results key, we return that value from the dictionary that's returned, or we return the entire dictionary. The dictionary that's returned from calling the proc is our actual parameters. Any values that were output parameters have now been replaced with the actual results. Last part of the core, the abstract base class. The whole point in this class is to lay out exactly how your implementation interfaces to the underlying things that your abstraction is covering. And it can be so tempting to just skip it and make a concrete class. The problem is, the next time you try to write this, you won't know what in your concrete class is actually part of the abstraction and what's part of your actual internals. I always write this while I'm writing my actual first concrete base class to make sure I know exactly where the demarcation point is. It's also important that this class is typed. If you're using a weakly typed language, then make sure you use type annotations so that anyone who wants to reuse your abstraction knows exactly what types they need to use. And that was a deep dive into one of my real abstractions, but also how I go about writing and designing them. If you found this useful, then please leave a like so I know exactly where to hone my content. I've open sourced all of this code under the MIT license so you can reuse it in your own projects. To do this, you can just install it directly from the GitHub by using pip or uv. If you're using uv, then you just need to do uv add git plus and then the URL that you want to import. Pip is very similar. I actually have a video on installing from Git in pip. You'll see that video top left right now. And with that, thanks for watching, and I hope to catch you on the next one.